Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today it is my pleasure to have Carolyn Ketchum with us. Carolyn is the evil mastermind behind the popular keto blog, All Day I Dream About Food, and the best-selling author of The Ultimate Guide to Keto Baking. I wouldn't call her an evil mastermind. That was what she wrote, but she's actually absolutely brilliant and has a pure and beautiful soul. Anyway, so Carolyn is a major carnivore and an unrepentant sweet tooth. Yet she is devoted to creating innovative and delicious low carb recipes that don't sacrifice on flavor. Carolyn, it's so great to have you on the show.
It's wonderful to be here and see you again.
Yeah, so we used to work together many years ago, and you were actually a guest on this podcast back probably 6 years ago or something.
Gosh, was it that long? Oh my goodness. It doesn't feel that long, but yeah. Well, I used to work for you, but I guess we could say with you.
That's
It sounds better.
Yeah, I think with is better. Yes.
Okay.
So let's just see, when was that episode? Yeah, 2015.
Wow. Oh, you know what? That was before I wrote a cookbook and you were encouraging me to go for it. And then I did. And then I wrote 6 of them.
I'm so glad you did. Well, you had a really popular blog back then, but yeah, I don't think you had your cookbooks.
I did not have my cookbooks.
So the blog is titled All Day I Dream About Food. And I know that is kind of a hat tip to the Adidas brand, right?
Yes, it is.
All Day I Dream About Sports, Adidas. And
right.
What have you learned from blogging all these years? Because your blog has been going for what, a decade now or something, maybe even more than
11
that.
years. Wait, this is 2022. It was really not something big at the beginning, so it's been 12 years.
Yeah.
It's been since 2010. Things have changed dramatically. So what have I learned? Don't expect things to stay the same. Like, don't get into a rut so that you're like, oh no, it changed and I didn't change with it.
Right. And that applies to the business model. It applies to your fan base. It applies to kind of the routines and potentially the ruts that you get into, the processes and systems that you develop. Like, let's go into a little more detail.
Yeah, it applies to everything. I mean, it definitely applies to what I do day to day. I feel like fortunately or unfortunately, because I like it, but I can get sucked into it. The social media landscape has changed a lot, and it's definitely more demanding. And as much as I would love to pass that off to someone, I find it really hard to do because I'm very much my blog. I am, it's very personal to me. And so when someone, and no one knows keto baking like I do. So when I hire someone, I have some help, but when I hire someone and they try to sort of answer questions, I'm like, no, don't say that. So it affects everything. I mean, the SEO landscape has changed, of course, it always does. And, and I think the thing is, it kind of keeps you on your toes, which is good. And also, you hit points where you go, well, what do I want from this now? And I think that one of my things is writing cookbooks has taken some relief off of, because I really love writing the recipes and I can put them in cookbooks now, even some online sort of ebooks. Then it doesn't all have to be just about the blog. There are other ways to kind of branch out and make a name.
Mm-hmm. Now, the blog gets roughly how much traffic?
Anywhere between 2 and 3 million people a month, page views a month, I should say.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's big. It was growing really well, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, because everybody was home and wanted to learn how to cook and bake. And a lot of people, I think, came to keto at that point. And then it slowed down a little because once life got back a little more to normal, people were out and about and they want easy, deliverable recipes. They always ask me if I deliver. I'm like, no.
Excuse me? This is a cooking site. You're supposed to cook.
Right. Exactly.
That's awesome. people can be kind of rude, right? Like demanding, unrealistic,
Absolutely. It's
cranky.
really interesting. Yes. And it's really interesting because there's a lot of troll behavior too. Um, like on YouTube, I currently have a video that goes viral every so often. And then I just get, I get people just coming making random comments. They're obviously not interested in keto at all. They want to tell me what I'm doing wrong the whole time. So I've learned, don't fire back, just delete, delete, delete.
Yeah, yeah. So which video is that? I'll share it in the show notes for this episode.
It's some no bake peanut butter bars, and they're almost at a million. It's almost at a million views, and it goes quiet for a little, like months at a time, and then it explodes again. I don't know why YouTube decides to start showing it again, and then I get all these, or I get people telling me to eat a different diet. So we'll
Yeah.
never agree there.
Oh my goodness. Well, actually, let's, for our listeners' benefit, if they don't understand the difference between keto and paleo, can we just get that out of the way right now?
Sure, there's lots of crossover. It's usually about whole foods and things like that, but I love to bake, so I do use sweeteners. Um, and there's plenty of crossover, but keto, people approach keto differently. Some people do dairy free, which paleo is. I don't do dairy free necessarily because I like cream and butter. Um, and there's a lot of things on paleo that you can't eat on keto, like sweet potatoes or bananas or plantains, because they just have too many carbs. So, but there's plenty of crossover, and sometimes I get inspired by paleo blogs. Sometimes somebody from a paleo blog will take one of my recipes and adapt it for paleo. So there's plenty of sort of connection there.
Hmm. It's funny, as I just learned that I can't be keto uh,
Because,
because of my genetics. I just
oh,
learned it
really?
last week.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you doing keto?
I did do a metabolic reset diet for 42 days. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
42 days. I lost 20 pounds. I lost 5% body fat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got rid of my gut. It was awesome. And all I ate was 4 ounces of vegetable, 4 ounces of fruit, 4 ounces of protein. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, the protein was either cottage cheese or tofu,
Okay.
and no carbs and no oils.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was super strict and only an 8-hour eating window. So I
Oh,
would
yes.
eat
So
from,
intermittent fasting. Yeah.
yep, yep. So I would eat between 11 and 7. Yeah.
Okay.
No snacking, only 2 meals. And
Wow.
yeah, so the 4 ounces, 444, twice a day. And that's
How
it.
did you feel?
Amazing. Full of
Oh.
energy. Just, yeah, it was incredible. The first few days were hard. I had to do 2 days of really heavy duty loading
Mm-hmm.
where I pigged out 4,000 and some calories a day, which is really hard to do. I
It
had no idea.
is.
I was supposed to get to up to 5,000 calories. I'm like, no way. I'm barely able to get to 4,000. And I was eating so much junk. You're not really
Oh.
supposed to eat the junk. You're supposed to eat mostly like clean uh, uh, calories. But oh, yeah, I just ate the most atrocious garbage
Might have
because
been
I
kind of
just,
fun.
it was fun. It was fun. And then next few days were rough after
Yeah.
that. But then I got this amazing boost of energy, and I never would have imagined that I could do this for that length of time without cheating, without making
Mm-hmm.
any screw ups, but I nailed it.
That's impressive. That is
My
impressive.
my wife Orion was very proud of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. So that's my biggest foray into kind of the keto or
Lower
paleo
carb.
or yeah, low carb, but it wasn't. a keto diet. It wasn't a paleo diet. It was the metabolic reset diet, which I got
Mm-hmm.
from Sachin Patel, who I know from Genius Network. He was a past guest. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was amazing. And I've kept much of the weight off. I've gained a little bit, but not a ton. So I lost 20 pounds. I probably gained about 6 or 7
Yeah, that's
of that
great.
back. Yeah.
I don't have, so my thing for keto is I never had weight to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was always about my blood sugar because I like to tease my youngest that she gave me gestational diabetes.
Oh,
And then it didn't really fully resolve. So, like a couple months after I had her, my blood sugar started to rise again. And so it's always been about blood sugar maintenance. And for a long time, I was just what I'd say is just low carb. And then I realized that when I had the most control I had over my blood sugar was when I would sort of do the stuff that fell into the keto category. So, but I do like my desserts. So baking was very important to me, and it always will be. So making that a part of my diet. And I don't, people always ask me, do you do you actually eat all that? And I was like, well, I don't eat the whole thing. I mean, if I make a thing that serves 16, my husband's eating it, my kids are eating it, I take some to friends because mostly I'm ready to move on to the next recipe. So, but I always have some of what I make. Yeah, always. And I always have dessert, but I try to save dessert for dessert as opposed to eating it in the middle of the day. So if I make a cake, I have to wait till after dinner to have some.
gotcha. I went 2.5 years without eating dessert. That was really hard as well, but I got into this mode where it didn't phase me at all. I was like, yeah, that's just who I am now. And then I
Yeah.
and then I slipped, and now I just chow down on, on sugar. I'm back with a
The
vengeance.
sugar
It's
is, I mean, I have a taste for sweet, but being sugar free, I think, makes it so that I can pass things up pretty easily. If I'm at a party or somewhere out to dinner and somebody gets dessert and they're always apologetic, and I'm like, don't worry, it doesn't bother me. I'm not fazed by it. And the
yeah.
interesting thing for me is that a lot of my readers want me to create bread and pizza and fake pasta. Um, and I don't crave those things. So I create some of those recipes and write them mostly for the readers, but I don't myself crave bread things very much. I'd rather have the meat, the vegetables, and a little bit of dessert.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Now, do you still have gestational diabetes? Is that still something that's part of
I
your
have
life?
pre-diabetes. I have pre-diabetes.
Okay.
So I've never been fully diagnosed with type 2, but I'm positive I would be if I ate too many carbs. If I went back to a standard American diet, which is, no matter what diet you approach, the standard American diet is not the one you want to be following.
Yeah.
So if I went back to that, because if I eat a little too much of something, I can spike, not crazy like a full blown diabetic, but enough to be like, yep, if I ate more of that, I'd have some problems.
Hmm.
So
Do you wear one of those monitors that checks your
a
blood sugar
CGM,
continuously? Yeah.
mm,
Continuous
I wore
glucose monitor.
one.
Yeah.
Yes. Those are really fascinating. And for somebody who's a type 1 diabetic, they're super important. But for me, somebody actually sent me, a parent of a type 1 diabetic. She creates kits, and she was like, I'd just be really curious for you to wear one for a month. And so she sent me a kit, and I wore it because they're really expensive, unless you have insurance to pay for it. And I wore one for a month, and it was fascinating. Like things like hard exercise can spike your blood sugar because your liver starts putting out glucose to, keep you energetic because you're putting your body under stress. So it was really interesting to see some of those little spikes, or something like, a glass of wine can drop your blood sugar significantly. So it was really interesting to see that. But mostly I just have a little monitor that I prick my finger and test 2 or 3 times a day.
Hmm. Yeah. Got it. I did wear a CGM for for the entire time I did the metabolic reset, the 42
Uh-huh.
days, and then maybe a month after that, and a couple weeks before that to establish a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
what was really cool, and this sounds kind of out there, but I was able to bring my blood sugar back up without eating just by breathing.
Oh, interesting.
That was
Just kind of
wild.
concentrating.
Yeah, just like the breathing, doing deep
Yeah.
Wim Hof type breathing would
Mm-hmm.
help stabilize my blood sugar so I didn't have to break my fast early.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the fasting, I have done some intermittent fasting, and the longest I think I've ever fasted was probably about 18 to 20 hours, but it didn't seem to have an effect on my blood sugar. And because I work out sometimes, I work out fasted a lot of the time, but then I'm really hungry afterwards.
Yeah.
So
You know, intermittent fasting actually works or doesn't work depending on your genetics.
that would be, there's something I'd like to test because there are things that, don't fit the keto mold or don't fit it. And one of my frustrations with the keto culture is that there's a bit of a one size fits all mentality, which happens in every diet. And I'm sure it happened with paleo and all of those things too. But, when people will tell you, you shouldn't eat dairy or you shouldn't eat this and you should, and there is so much misinformation online as well. It's very painful to see. And so I definitely think that there are things that work for some people and things that don't. And I'm not going to tell you, you have to do keto or, your best approach is this way. I might tell you what I do and what works for me, but I'm not going to try to force anybody into a mold.
Yeah, that's good. You know, the pre-diabetes, do you consider that to be a gift, or do you consider that to be like this unfortunate thing that's happened to you?
It's a gift. I've created a whole career based on it. Are you like, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't go back to eating. My dad actually, interestingly, asked me, oh gosh, a long time ago now, but it was still, I'd been doing low carb for 5 years or so. And he said, well, what if they're wrong? And what if, this is all a mistake and you're fine? And I was like, I wouldn't change the way I eat. I love it. And I also love creating the recipes and having learned a skill and developed a skill because I think before I came along, there wasn't that much in sort of the keto baking world. And I love the experimentation and coming up with an idea and seeing if I can make it a reality. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world. So yeah, a
Yeah,
gift. I like to tease my daughter, but she's always like, yes, but I gave you a career. And I'm like, yes, you did. So
that's awesome. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I learned not long ago, last year sometime, about this concept called soul contract, and I had Vasundhara Gupta on the podcast to talk about it because that's how I discovered about soul contracts. Was reading her article on um, my spiritual shenanigans is the name of her blog.
Hmm.
So she wrote a great article about it, and I'm like, I got to have her on my show. And the concept is this: that all these things that seem to happen to us, many of these things that are life altering, both positively and negatively, like
Mm-hmm.
gestational prediabetes, were part of our agreements before we incarnated. We
Mm.
chose it. We knew it was coming, but then with spiritual amnesia, when you come into this body, you forget all the stuff.
Yeah.
It's like if you let's say you go to watch a movie, but you've already read the spoilers and the plot line in the Wikipedia article, that wouldn't be a very enjoyable movie, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
Right.
so
That's
spiritual amnesia actually works to your benefit because it's a game you enjoy playing. Hopefully, hopefully you have a good
right.
life that you're enjoying it. But the all the spoilers coming to you would kind of ruin it for you. Wouldn't be a fun game, or it would be a movie that you know how it turns out. So I don't know. What do you think about that concept of that
Oh.
this was a soul contract you agreed to and actually chose to get gestational prediabetes before you incarnated so that you end up with, all this revelation of light, all the amazing things that you're doing for people in the world, helping change their health and their diets.
I like that. I like that. I mean, I think there are people, and I would categorize myself as one of them, who roll with the punches pretty well. I mean, at the time, I'm usually like, mad. And then I'm like, okay, how can I work this to my advantage? So I kind of think that makes sense to me, where I'm like, yeah, okay, this is the hand I'm dealt, and this is what I'm going to do with it. And not everybody's like that, though. And maybe the spiritual amnesia for them is just too strong, or they agreed to something they didn't really actually want. I don't know. Because I know a lot of people who just end up fighting what comes their way, and that makes them so unhappy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you get them to change that mindset, but I wouldn't change things. And so maybe I did sign a contract that said, because that's the other thing you said, I'm helping people. And one of the things that sustains me when I'm, frustrated with how things are going, or just exhausted by it, as I think we all do, no matter how much we love our jobs, there are times where we're like, ugh, is when somebody writes and says, it can be a diabetic or the parent of a diabetic, or somebody who lost 100 pounds, and they just thank me and say that my recipes saved them, because a lot of people don't think that they can sustain keto or low carb until, and for me, it's the same way. I sustain it by having some enjoyment in things like dessert. And a lot of people agree, like it keeps them on track rather than derailing them. And when somebody writes me and says, sometimes people are a little hyperbole here, that I saved their life. And I'm like, no, you saved your own life. I just gave you the tools to do it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember Anil Gupta, who was on the podcast some years ago. He's the author of Immediate Happiness.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, my wife wasn't really pursuing her coaching and her career that much. And he said something that I found very applicable to me too, and I think for everybody. And that is, as you don't show up and not really stand in your power and do what you're
Mm-hmm.
meant to do, people are dying. People are literally dying.
Oh, you just gave me shivers. Ooh. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
By the way, those shivers are angel bumps. That's confirmation from the angels. I learned that too last year. Yeah, goosebumps are actually angel bumps.
Huh.
Yeah. When you get this intuition, like, oh, I really need to stop this person, tell them to be more careful or whatever, or watch out. I don't know, something. You just get this intuition that I need to say something, and then you get the goosebumps.
Yeah.
That's the confirmation. That's like the thumbs up from the other side.
Well, I just got a whole bunch of them.
That's cool.
A whole bunch of thumbs up. No, it was really what you said. I mean, it makes really good sense to me that this is something I was meant to do. And, it can be a drag sometimes, but there's always that moment of, it's either when I'm creating a recipe that just works and it's so good and I'm so excited to share it with everybody, or when somebody emails me and says, your recipes helped me so much. It feels good and it feels right.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're on the leading edge of creation. You're creating out of, turning ideas into physical manifestations, and it's an amazing thing. Like everyone who's creating something, whether it's an app or anything really, they're creating. They're turning nothing into something. They're turning an idea into reality. They're manifesting. They're co-creating. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about how you built up this amazing brand and following uh, blog reader base and followers and all that? Like, what are some of the things that worked, and what are some of the things that haven't worked?
That's a good question. Well, when I started, I had no clue. I just thought you put something up and suddenly you were being picked up by Google. I mean, woo! Now I know that's just so ridiculous. Um, but so it took a while. There were, at that point, food blogging was relatively new to a lot of people, and I didn't think there was any way you could, make a living off of this. And so I was just doing it for fun. And then I joined, some networks. Like I kind of was like, well, I want this stuff to be seen. So I joined some blogging networks, and those kind of helped because other bloggers would come to your blog and say, oh, that looks so great. And you do the same thing for them. It was just finding ways to constantly put it out there. And social media at that time consisted of Twitter, which, I don't even really use Twitter anymore. I mean, Facebook existed, but people didn't really use it to promote. But, Facebook, let's see, working for you helped because then I started, I would proofread some of your stuff and be like, huh, okay. I didn't even, I haven't been applying that to anything that I just thought I wrote and put some photos up. And, the first few photos were absolutely awful. So teaching myself photography was highly important because you want something to look appetizing. You can't just say it's good. And Google obviously loves good photos. So, and people are so much more likely to click on a recipe if it has a decent photo beside it. If
Yeah.
it
Well,
doesn't
what
look
about
like
time lapse? Those videos where they speed up, like I'm whipping the eggs and I'm putting it into whatever, and and it goes really fast, and then it
yeah.
slows down to show you the key moments. Seems like there's kind of
Yeah.
an art to that too. Do you do that?
Yeah, I love doing that with some. I do mostly. So I love teaching. So when I started doing YouTube videos, at first I did those hands in the pan style where I'm, it's just you don't see me. And then I started doing ones where I was talking to the camera and setting everything up, and showing people. And you can speed up parts of it. Like if I'm showing you yet another section where I'm whipping some egg whites, that gets pretty boring. So you can speed that up. But I just really like talking to people and giving them. And while I'm doing it, I'm thinking of the tips that make this recipe good. So I really like doing that. And those have helped too. Things have moved a lot from being photography to being video, which video is so much more work, but it's also more reward. So, and it's more of a connection with people. So that's kind of, I love that. It's like, yeah, blogging networks and food, particularly food blogging networks, were a huge part of my growth. I learned a lot from other bloggers how to kind of maximize things, but you also have you also only have so much bandwidth. So there has to be things where you try it and then you just think, I don't have time for this, or it's not worth right now. And you wait. One thing that I do is I wait till everybody else tries it out. And then I'm like, oh yeah, it might work. So, but things like, do you remember Google Plus and all of that? And that was going to be so
Right.
big and it was going to take over Facebook and everybody's putting a whole bunch of energy into it. And guess what? It didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Thankfully,
like,
I didn't. I put a pretty much zero time into that
I
platform.
tried
Yep.
it a little and then I thought this isn't helping me in any way, but it is about experimentation. So yes, I've sort of I haven't jumped on every bandwagon. And I feel like now, like I'm not on TikTok. I am on TikTok, but I've put up like a single video because just to kind of grab my username. So when something new comes along, it's like grab your username and then sit back and figure it out because it can be too much and too overwhelming if you're trying to do it all. So
Yeah. Yeah. You got to deep dive on probably one platform, maybe two, and then the
right,
others,
exactly.
you're just a dabbler. Yeah. You don't want to
Exactly.
spread yourself too thin because you
Yeah.
can't do everything really well.
Right. Exactly. Which has taken me a bit of time to learn. And you can feel a measure of anxiety when everybody's saying, oh, we're doing this and you're not doing it. But then again, sit back and watch. Observation really helps. But those groups have helped me. There's a lot of sort of Facebook groups devoted to help bloggers helping each other figure things out, which makes a huge difference, I think. So
Yeah.
I learned a
Yeah.
lot along the way just about promoting myself. But I get to the point where I'm sick of hearing the sound of my own voice. So it becomes sort of just, okay, take a back seat for a little while, just do stuff on social media, and then jump back in when you're ready.
Mm-hmm. Now, is one of those communities Blog Her that you got a lot of value out of?
I did. They were great for a really, really long time. And I went to some of their conferences. I was in Miami for one, actually. They were an ad network and I was with them for a long time. I'm no longer with them because they just can't offer the kind of RPMs and revenue that other ad networks can, but they still send great information. And I don't hear people going to those conferences as much anymore. Are they still,
Right.
well, I guess the pandemic changed everything, but
Yeah, that definitely had an impact. But also, it seems like once they sold to Shino's Media, it kind of, yeah, it didn't. Yeah, I
yeah.
spoke at a couple of Blog Her events, and my oldest daughter spoke at
Mm-hmm.
several of them. She actually got that kind of really launched her career as a teen blogger,
Mm-hmm.
doing speaking at a Blog Her event in when she was 16 years old. That was what 2007.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. I didn't even
Yeah,
know of blogging back then.
yeah, yeah. It was pretty amazing. So, anyways, yeah, that was a great conference for a very long time, or a set of conferences.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are these more specialized, even more like niche
Mm-hmm.
blogger conferences, blogger groups. Like I didn't know until I got invited to speak that there is a pet blogging conference.
Yeah, I
And
bet there's everything now. But Blog Her was a really great network for a long time. And I worked with them on lots of things and it really helped for a long time. It just became evident that they were, as an ad network, they weren't pulling their weight
yeah, yeah,
so you had to move. So
right. Now, are you monetizing? Oh, and by the way, I was trying to remember the name of the conference that was for pet bloggers. It's Blog Pause,
oh, that's
PAWS.
cute. That's very
Yeah,
cute.
yeah, yeah. So, what are you using then to monetize your traffic? Are you using Google AdSense, using Mediavine, or like what? What's
I'm with AdThrive,
okay?
and they're really great. They have helped me along. I mean, I think they maybe see potential in certain blogs, and so they've given me a number of opportunities. One was working with a man named Matt Mullen, who is like an email guru. So for your newsletter, like he totally changed my concept of how to do, a newsletter. I was doing a weekly one that, was just my last 3 recipes of the week and my RSS feed, and that was it. And it wasn't really growing, and then he came along and he showed me how to sort of, he has this thing called, well, first of all, to get people to engage, he did, you do 5 secrets of, so mine was like the 5 secrets to keto baking. And if you sign up, you get 5 emails in a row day to day that tell you my tricks and tips. But they also link to recipes. And then hopefully people enjoy that. So they end up sticking around and they go into a feed of what he calls the forever series. So you're constantly building that out so that everybody, they're not all getting the same email at the same time every week. Depending on when they signed up, they're getting a new thing that it's all your best content repackaged. And it was the repackaging, because I have thousands of recipes. I mean, I've been doing this for so long, and it was the repackaging and repurposing of them which kind of blew my mind. And my email list grew from 35 to 160,000 people in like a year and a half. And
Wow.
yeah, it's really helpful because it always gives me that boost. So when something goes out to everybody, there's a day where I know I'll get a ton of traffic. And it's fun. And I've made more connections that way too with readers and things. So they feel like they're getting something more personalized, which I think really helps.
Now, do you time it so that when your newsletter goes out, you had just posted a video that you're trying to get to be in Google's suggested list of videos, get the recommendation engine really kicking in there?
I
So
don't do it for new, like what I found was it's actually more effective for older things that I'm trying to get re-seen.
Okay.
So the Forever series, if it's something about, my pancakes, my keto pancakes with almond flour, I do that, but that one goes out to people, on the list. So people move through the list of things, but there's also sort of for seasonal stuff, there's a newsletter that goes out every week that's not necessarily my newest stuff, but more seasonally appropriate. So St. Patrick's Day or Easter or, lemon recipes for spring, that kind of thing. I do find I call it cross-pollinating between social media. It really helps. So I had a lemon muffin recipe that I did on YouTube, and it wasn't really getting seen. So I posted it on Facebook, and Facebook hates when you do a YouTube link. They kill the views. They kill the views. But if I do little tricks, like I say I say something, like I use the first comment, you guys have to check this out. It's so great, and suddenly people are checking it out. And then that one, which wasn't seeing too many views, suddenly I thought it got picked up by YouTube, but it didn't. It actually then got picked up by Google because I looked at where the traffic was coming from, and it suddenly was getting a bunch of Google traffic. So that was good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I just was out of curiosity Googling keto pancakes to see how you're ranking.
I'm not ranking well at that one anymore.
No, you're like buried.
I know. I used to be in the top 5, and then I used to be in the top 5 and it started to slip. And then I updated it completely and it just hasn't come back. I don't know why.
Right. Well, we can talk about that.
One thing I need to do, which actually has helped, is doing the timestamps on the video in YouTube. Google really likes that. So I haven't gone back and done that for that one, and I need to.
That's one thing that I do, or my team does for me in all of these podcast interviews, is figure out what the kind of table of contents or the major outline of topics are in the interview, and then assign timestamps to each of those sections, and those become clickable links.
Yes.
Each timestamp is then clickable and will play the audio in the player on the show notes page.
Yeah, it's really cool. Helpful.
Yeah. We use a plugin called Simple Podcast Press for the audio that it supports it just out of the box. It'll look for any mentions of time that look like a timestamp and turn that into a link.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Very cool.
I wasn't really using YouTube that way originally. I was just using it to host my videos and then putting them in the recipe card on my site. And then suddenly some of them started to do really well. And I started to realize that it was, that YouTube was worth my time. So.
Oh, it's totally worth your time. It is the number 2 search engine.
Yeah.
By search volume.
Yeah.
You have really impressive stats. I'm looking at your YouTube channel right now. You got nearly 100,000 subscribers.
I know. I'm hoping to get there by the end of March.
Of course you're going to get there. You could speed that up just by asking your fans to help push you over the edge, right?
I have done that a couple of times. I will probably do, if I don't look like I'm going to hit 100K by the end of March, then I will probably do a little push.
Yeah. So by the time this episode airs, I'm sure you'll be at over 100. Okay. And you have 5.5 million views. That's impressive.
Is it? Where do you find that bit?
It's under the About tab.
Oh, okay. It
says joined May 6, 2012, 5,578,669 views.
Wow. I didn't even see that. That's a lot. It's interesting though, because I keep thinking of it. My problem is I'm still stuck in I want to drive traffic to my blog. because that's where most of the money comes from, with ad revenue and also ebook sales and things like that. But then I've started to realize that it's okay for something to be a standalone thing, because YouTube doesn't really drive a lot of traffic, especially because you're basically giving them the recipe there, but it also expands the brand, and gets people to know me and trust me because recipes are turning out well and I'm showing them exactly how to do it and I'm giving them extra tips for the kitchen, things like that.
You need a hook. You need something that will bait them to go to your website. Some irresistible offer. And I don't know what it is, but I'm sure if you noodle on that for a bit, you're going to come up with something, right? And then think of like every video, every podcast interview you do, like this one, is an opportunity not just for a brand impression, but also to get a new member of your tribe, a new fan, a new super fan, right? So what would that super fan look like? Kind of do a whole persona of that person, kind of get in their world, imagine what life is like for them, and what would really turn them on, what would really excite them, what would they find to be just so enticing they can't say no to it. And then make that thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is.
Well, one thing I've been meaning to do forever, which I think would really be good for the blog, because I have so many great recipes that are basic, easy, but creative at the same time. So I've been meaning to do this, and I meant to do it for January, because January is what I like to call diet season, when everybody's suddenly jumping on a new diet and trying it out, is sort of a keto for beginners page that has all like links to good articles that I've written, because I have a whole article on how to get back on track if you fall off the wagon. I have articles on, because everybody sort of thinks when they first start that an alternative sweetener, they all work the same way. They don't, absolutely do not. And you're going to have huge differences in the outcome if you use this one over that one. And so I have an article about that. And then I have articles that are just devoted to easy keto dinners, or all my best keto muffin recipes. And muffins are a great place to start because they're more forgiving than something like cake. So, I just need to put that page together. That's like a resource that I can kind of keep promoting in so many ways, on YouTube, on Facebook, on, so that people have everything at their fingertips. But those fingertips take you to individual recipes throughout the blog.
Yeah. So I think incorporating into your videos, like, oh, and by the way, you really need to get this thing. It's almost like a subtle commercial for something of yours, some sort of lead magnet, irresistible offer thing. Yeah, I think that would be good for you.
Thank you for the tip.
Yeah. Now I see that you also have custom video thumbnails for all your YouTube videos.
I started to do that because it makes a real difference, because just seeing, half the time when you let it populate itself, you get this. You're in the weirdest position, or your eyes are half closed, or it just doesn't look good. And the lighting in my kitchen isn't fabulous. So creating a thumbnail makes a real difference.
Yeah. And you can do this with all your old videos too.
Yes, I need to go back and do them with a bunch.
Yeah, you need a VA.
I have one, I've now my husband is sort of my VA, actually. His job ended in October. It was kind of coming for a long time. Actually, just before the pandemic, he was going to quit and work with me. And then the pandemic came along and we thought, might not be the time right now. So he stuck it out for another year and a bit. And then they were changing things anyway. And he's like, okay, I'll go. So he's sort of but he resists social media. So I need to train him to do some of that stuff. But he does a bunch of things for me, like editing ebooks and helping me sort of behind the scenes. And one of the great parts is it used to, because I was the one who worked from home, it was always, a kid's sick, who gets to pick them up? Me. And, a kid needs to go to the dentist, or the dog needs to do something. It was always me. And so now it's taken a little bit of pressure off for him to be home.
Yeah, that's great. So I think you need more than just your husband. virtual assisting you.
Yeah, probably. I do have some help with Facebook. But again, it's really hard. I don't think of myself as the controlling type. The problem is, as I've said, my blog is deeply personal to me. Like I've tried to describe it to people. My blog is me and I'm my blog. I'm not one of those, I'm not going to hire writers because I don't feel comfortable if it's not my recipes and my tips. And so on things like social media, when people want a question about, can I sub this for that? I don't know who to trust to answer those questions properly. That's my
But a
tricky
VA
part.
could rattle off all these different questions that they've collected from all the different, like she or he could assemble all of the questions in one place and get you on a Zoom call and just go over like, okay, what about this one? Oh, what about this one? Okay, I'll type all these up. I'll put them in the Google Sheet. You can approve them, and then I'll get them published on all the different social places, and we'll repurpose some of this into quote cards and image-based social media stuff. So yeah, it seems like you could really grow this just with another team member or two, and they're not expensive. Somebody out of the Philippines could be as low as $4 or $5 an hour,
Wow.
and that's a really good wage for the
Yeah.
Philippines. So
I have a blogger friend who sort of dabbles in keto and low carb who helps. But again, so one of the things and this was a learning process for me working with you, was emulating somebody else's voice. And that's a tricky one. And my voice is...
It is, but it's doable. It is doable. I have not written my own blog posts in many, many years, and I have not been tweeting myself for years. So my Twitter, S. Spencer, I tweet apparently multiple times a day. I have no idea what I'm tweeting.
That's hilarious.
My own newsletter, I don't write. I don't even review it.
Oh.
I have no idea what's going out on a weekly basis.
You have somebody now you really trust for that.
Yeah, my team I trust, and they're different people doing, like Trisha's handling my Twitter, Rebecca's handling my Thursday 3 newsletter, and if I need to replace somebody, if they're leaving or whatever, and I need someone else to step in, then they'll get trained and the handover will happen, and I'm not going to get pulled back in and write my own newsletter again. No, thank you. I got other things to do. I'm way too busy. Like, I can't imagine if I would be the one to do A/B split testing on my video thumbnails on YouTube. Like, no way.
Yeah.
Never, ever.
Yeah.
By the way, that's another thing that you should be doing is A/B split testing your thumbnails so that you can see what
grabs
will perform
people
better. I have a feeling that you're going to get better results with a bigger picture of you zoomed in on your face.
Okay.
Right? Not a half body shot, but like big thing of your face.
Yeah. Some of that is own personal comfort level, though. It's like,
well, all growth happens outside your comfort zone.
True. I know that. Yeah.
And the numbers won't lie. Like, you can run the test and see what happens. It's pretty low risk.
Yeah, I should try that.
Use TubeBuddy. TubeBuddy is the tool that supports A/B. Yeah, supports A/B split testing of your video thumbnails and your titles.
Right.
So you could look at the one like Keto Thin Mints, Easy Girl Scout Cookie Copycat Recipe. That one could do really well with a tweaked title tag.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe
13,000 views on that. Seems like people are probably Googling for Girl Scout
alternative
Thin Mints recipes or something like that.
Yeah. The A/B testing, which I've done I did a lot of that on Pinterest. Now, unfortunately, Pinterest has died a very slow and painful death for what it was before. They're really pushing those story pins, which I do some of them just to kind of please but they're not helpful for the problem with them. I don't know what you think of Pinterest. I'm not a big fan anymore. Part of it is that the user experience isn't fun anymore. You get served these idea pins, but you can't click through to the actual recipe or anything. and people get very frustrated, and then they're mad at you if you do them. So you're sort of walking a fine balance between trying to please Pinterest.
Please the algorithm. Yeah.
So
It's
I used
tough.
to,
Like for example, any of these algorithms, they penalize you essentially for link-based
right.
posts. So if you're trying to drive somebody to a recipe and you're posting that on whatever platform, it's going to get dialed back by the algorithm versus if it's just an image or it's just a textual tweet or post that gets rewarded because you keep the person on the platform.
Absolutely. And that's where Pinterest went. But unfortunately, had it been something that users loved and readers loved, I would have been, sure, okay, I'll play this game. Users hate it. And as evidenced by the fact that Pinterest, like their stock went really low for a bit. They think they know what they're doing, but they're not serving anyone except maybe somebody who's paying for ads. I don't know. I don't know what the thought process there is, but it's not a good experience for my followers. And it's not a great experience for me anymore either when I'm on there. I would spend hours on Pinterest getting recipe ideas and, think like, oh, there's a high carb recipe that I think I could make low carb. And now it's just not, searching is not fun on there. So.
Yeah, that's a shame. So do you think that that Pinterest is a platform not worth bothering with anymore?
I keep hoping it'll come back. I think they've lost their way. And I'm hoping they'll come back to something that's a little more friendly for people who create, and then also for people who use it because it used to be basically like a big old search engine. So I think it's still worth putting some stuff up and seeing what comes of it, but not, you asked what works and what doesn't. You have to sometimes just disengage a little on something. You can say, okay, I'll feed it a few things, but it was really disheartening to see where it went. And so it was just this, okay, I can't care about this too much anymore. I can care a little, but I can't give you, more of my heart at the moment.
Yeah, but your stats are amazing. Like you are a big Pinterest influencer. 412,000 followers, 10 million monthly views.
I used to see more than that. I used to see something like 15 to 20,000 or 20 million, Yeah, it just isn't, isn't what it used to be. And every food blogger has felt this way. I don't know if it benefits other fields, and it might. But the other problem is TikTok came along and every platform wants to now be TikTok, which I don't get, because I think, well, you had something unique. And like Instagram, for example, had something unique going with its photo sharing. And now it's trying to compete with TikTok. And I think, well, why put yourself in competition? Why not stay as you were, or change what you were, but change it to be something stronger in that area, as opposed to throwing yourself up against a new and very popular platform.
Yeah. And I see what you're talking about with it being a frustrating user experience. So I see on your Dream About Food Pinterest page, Keto Thin Mints. I click on it, and then it's got the 4 things, panels or whatever that it rotates through. And you can see generally what the recipe involves, but doesn't give all the detail. And then it says see the full recipe and you can't even click on the link.
And you can put the full,
you have to copy and paste.
What's interesting is you can put the full recipe in there, and people, which you like, okay, so that doesn't give me any traffic and there's no way to monetize it. So I don't want to, but at the same time, people still, when I do that, even when I've occasionally tried that as a way to get something going, people still users can't find the recipe. It's right there, but they can't find it, particularly on mobile. It's that same story. I'm assuming you're looking on desktop, and it's easier to see it on desktop. But when you move to mobile, it's really hard for people to find anything. So they're going, well, great photos or great video, but where's the damn recipe? And they get mad at you and you're like, blame Pinterest, not me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And also, excuse me, how much are you paying
Right,
me?
exactly.
Like, I didn't know I was your
Right.
employee.
Oh, that happens a lot. But there is an
Yeah.
interesting thing
Oh,
about
yeah.
people just getting really demanding these days and expecting.
And entitlement.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
rampant.
And the one that kills me, so especially over the holidays, I spend time with my family. I take breaks. I'm not going to answer your question when you on Thanksgiving morning when you decide you're going to make my keto stuffing and you want to know if you can sub this for that, and then you get mad that I don't respond. It's Thanksgiving.
Oh my goodness. I didn't know I was supposed to be on speed
Right,
dial.
right. I'm not. What was the turkey company that used to have like a hotline for on the day? That's not me. I'm not gonna have a hotline for keto recipes on Thanksgiving or Christmas. Thanks though.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't hear about that. Would that be like
Yes,
Butterball?
that's exactly who it is. Butterball had like
Okay.
a call-in hotline, like crises for your
Yeah,
turkey.
bat phone. Oh, funny. Okay, I know we need to wrap up here, but I've got one more question. Sweeteners. So you said it can really change the recipe if you swap in a different sweetener. So what are the best sweeteners to use, and what are the differences, and what's the impact?
Okay, I love this. This is like my favorite topic. Okay, so I've written a big long article about this, so I'll try to summarize quickly what one's the.
Yeah, and I'll include the article link in the
That's a
show
good
notes
one.
too.
What is the best sweetener really depends. It depends on a couple of things. Everybody tastes sweeteners differently. So somebody will say the one that I prefer the most is Swerve, which is mostly erythritol. A lot of people get a distinct cooling sensation with it, and they assume that everyone gets that, and not everyone does. So, half the population does and half the population doesn't. But then on my end, anything made with monk fruit has a really awful aftertaste. So some of it's about your own personal tastes. The problem there is if you switch something that's erythritol based, which will give you a nice crisp cookie, it's the only sweetener that will really give you a crisp cookie. And you try something like allulose, which is a hot new, it's actually a sugar, but it just doesn't register in your blood sugar for some reason. And
Sugar
that one's
alcohol.
not a sugar alcohol. Yeah. Erythritol is a sugar alcohol, and allulose is actually a sugar, because it ends in OSE. Oh, okay. So you know that.
Oh yeah, of course. I should know this. I went to have a master's in biochemistry. Right. I should know
this. Whereas OL is the
yeah, that's the alcohol.
And so, but it's really a great sweetener, and it tastes like sugar. It's not quite as sweet, but it tastes like sugar. But the problem is you can't get any crispness out of it. So I tried to make meringues with it, and it was like marshmallow fluff. I couldn't even get it off the pan. Or I did a video for this where I showed the same cookie baked with erythritol and one baked with allulose, and the erythritol one I could snap, and it actually, and then the other one I held it up and it went ooh, like it just curved right over. They tasted good, but it's not if you're looking for a crisp cookie. So it just depends so much on what you're trying to make. And people hate it that I can't just give them like a single answer and say, this is the one thing and everybody should use it. But if you're keen on baking, you need to know how these things, you can make the substitution, just be aware of how it's going to affect the result. So.
That's great. All right. So I learned something important today. Oh, it's going to be good for my sweet tooth and for my health to start going down this route rather than
and
all the sugar.
You're vegetarian, so there's lots of ways to make sweets, particularly sweets. Are you vegan or are you just vegetarian? Okay.
No.
So there's lots of easy ways to make sweets that satisfy that sweet tooth that don't have sugar.
Yeah. And by the way, I learned I can't or I should not be vegan from that same podcast guest, the CEO of the DNA company, Kashif Khan. He went through my genetics test as a follow-up interview. and we talked about all the things I can't do. And like, I did learn some cool things that I have some superpowers too. Like I have super strong arterial
Oh.
walls. So that was exciting. Yeah. So I don't have those paper thin ones that will end up with heart disease. But on the negative side, I can't be vegan. I can't be keto because my genetics don't support it. And I also will have gut issues if I'm not careful too. So there's, and I have trouble with too much toxins coming into my body, making it past my defenses because my defenses are a bit weak.
Interesting.
Especially the gut level. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I highly recommend getting a DNA test from the DNA company. I've done a lot of these different tests, like 23andMe, Ancestry.com, blah, 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 right? Simplified Genetics is another one that I've done, and I had the CEO of that company on as well. That was a cool one too, because it told you how to exercise, like should you do high intensity or low intensity, like what percentage, and high fat, low fat diet, et cetera, what percentage based on your genetics. This DNA company test was awesome. So I highly recommend.
Okay, good. I'm willing to do things like that.
Yep. All right. Okay. Well, we got to wrap up. So thank you so much, Carolyn. This was great to reconnect and to hear what you're up to. You've got such a successful and helpful online presence. It's just doing great things for people, and keep it up. You're saving
Thank
lives. You. And if our listener or viewer wants to, I don't know, buy your cookbook or follow you on social or read your blog, like give us all the places for them to go. And
sure, you can always go to, you can find me on my blog, which is All Day I Dream About Food. You can purchase one of my many cookbooks, which are usually available on Amazon. I got the Ultimate Guide to Keto Baking right here. I'm on YouTube as...
And that is not a small book.
No,
that
because
it's up there for somebody who's listening.
Because it's not just recipes.
They're not watching the video.
Recipes. The whole front of the book is all about, everything I have learned over the years, over the decades, of what works and what doesn't. So there's that. Facebook is All Day I Dream About Food. YouTube is All Day I Dream About Food. Pinterest is Dream About Food. And Instagram is Food Dreamer. That's me.
All right. Did you not be able to fit in the full username into Instagram, or was it
already taken by a vegan?
What happened?
And then she was just so it was really funny. The poor woman actually had all people constantly reaching out to her going, "I love your recipes." And she was like, so she ended up having a tagline on Instagram that said, not associated with the blog of the same name. So, and then, I don't think she ever did anything much with her Instagram. So.
Okay. So, thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, listener. I hope this has inspired you to try some fun and tasty out of the box recipes, and get out there in the kitchen and have some fun. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.